FPL Game Week 5, your complete guide. Hopefully in this video, we're going to take you through everything you need to do and everything you need to know going into the upcoming game week. We're going to have a look at some of your key questions. We're actually seeing quite a lot of people consider playing a chip this week, with almost 20% of managers wondering about the bench boost and 10% thinking about the wildcard. We'll have a look at what a wildcard draft will look like. We'll talk about which premiums you should own. Should it be Haaland and Salah? Should it be Salah and Palmer? Should it be Haaland, Palmer and Gyökeres? Which of these should you own? What does a draft look like? And actually, what should your chip strategy be over the next couple of weeks? What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new to the channel, and welcome to the Game Week 5 Complete Guide, the video where we hope to discuss everything you need to know in one video for the game week, which is now less than 24 hours away. We're going to dive straight in and cover what feels like the big topic at the early point of the season, and particularly this week after Mo Salah has looked good in the Champions League, is which premiums should you be owning? I think a lot of us had said going into Game Week 6 that we would sell Mo Salah out of our teams in order to buy Erling Haaland for Burnley at home if we didn't own him already. However, Mo Salah midweek showed what he is able to do in the Champions League. Goal and assist and lots of chances created and lots of shots on goal, include hitting the post. I still think that for the next few games for Burnley, Brentford, Everton, Haaland looks like someone I don't really want to go against. But there is a strategy now where if you're wildcarding over the next couple of weeks that you could look to go with Haaland and Mo Salah. But I still think Haaland probably ranks higher up in the ranking in terms of performance for me than Mo Salah does at the moment. Salah is probably competing more with Palmer and Gyökeres compared to Haaland in my mind. That you can probably go Haaland and Salah, and I think that's all right. You can probably go Haaland, Palmer, Gyökeres. But if you're going Haaland and Salah, you probably can't fit in either Cole Palmer or Gyökeres. It kind of weakens the rest of your draft too much. So I think Haaland and Salah are actually a little bit separate. Although for a lot of us, if we're not wildcarding, it's the only route to go and buy Haaland next week. In which case, despite the Salah performance midweek, I still think Haaland ranks higher in terms of necessity for me over the next few weeks. Next up, one of the biggest questions I'm getting and seeing in the comments is actually similar to my plan, but I'm seeing a lot of people consider this. Should I roll the transfer and play the bench boost this week? So if you're looking at your team and thinking there isn't that much to change this week, that is because this is the lowest projected goals scored in a game week since April 2023. There are very few games which can look like they're going to massively swing one way or another, and there are a lot of games which are probably quite difficult to call. As a result, there don't look like there are any players which feel like necessities to buy this week. Like Semenyo has looked great, and he's probably the number one that I think of, but he is still playing in Newcastle, who ranked first for expected goals conceded so far this season. Haaland and Arsenal look great. Manchester City overall look great, but they play against each other in a game which is very difficult to call. Maybe you think Chelsea, but they go away to a Manchester United team. Yes, they haven't been great, but they've had a week off. Cunha and Mount are back available, and Chelsea have just played away in the Champions League against Bayern Munich. So the role of the transfer thing is very important. I've spoken about it all week. I plan on rolling my transfer. There's a lot of things we'll want our transfers for in Game Week 6 and Game Week 7, that this is a great week to play it. And it feels like quite a good week as a result to get rid of your bench boost, particularly because there's a lot of good defenses this week. A lot of the defenders we own, whether it's a Dubravka at home to Nottingham Forest, or whether it's a Fulham defender at home to Brentford, or whether you've got Spurs defenders against Brighton, there's a lot of good defenders that cause a little bit of a benching headache for a lot of us. And although some of you might have a Dewsbury Hall, you might have a Grealish against Liverpool, you might have a Reinders going up against Arsenal, it does look like quite a good week if you've got it to potentially just get rid of it, because with a lot of us wildcarding very soon, we then don't have to worry about the bench boost for future weeks. And with that in mind, 20% of people who replied to my poll said they are considering the bench boost this week, 8% considering the wildcard, 2% the free hit. Not many triple captains this week. Again, it's not a really good week for picking captains, let alone playing your triple captain. So 30% of people are considering playing a chip this week, with bench boost being the main one, taking up the bulk of that, and also the wild card. We're also seeing a massive amount of chips being planned on being played in Game Week 6, whether that's the triple captain on Haaland at home to Burnley, whether it's a free hit in order to get Haaland in, or whether it's the wild card. Game Week 6 is likely to be the biggest week for a chip played so far this season. Now, talking about captaincy, it feels like one of the more boring weeks for captaincy with almost two-thirds of you captaining Mo Salah at home to Everton. And the reason it feels quite boring is because it doesn't feel like there's a standout alternative to try and go up against him. I've got Cole Palmer and João Pedro in my top five, but again, they've just played Bayern Munich and they go away to a Manchester United team who have to prove something at some point. I don't expect it to happen that soon, but Chelsea may be carrying a little bit of a fatigue from that match. And of course, against a game against Brentford last weekend, which went right to the end of the game. So I'm not sure I feel that confident on it. Erling Haaland will make the top five, but it's away at Arsenal. And Manchester City are only predicted to score 1.17 goals in that game, which is incredibly low. I've never seen Manchester City predicted to score so few goals in a game. And when you look that Arsenal are yet to concede a big chance so far this season, they have conceded just one goal, and that was the Dominic Szoboszlai free kick. You can understand why the projections are so low for Manchester City. Now, you could look elsewhere at Liverpool. I probably would go with Gakpo over Ekitike or over Isak because I'm not sure who's going to play up front, and I expect an early sub for whoever it is who starts. Wirtz is being disappointing, so that leaves Gakpo. You could look at someone like a Chris Wood if you fancied it. You could look at someone like Mateta, but both of them have been a little bit disappointing recently. So outside of Mo Salah, who is the biggest captain this week, most goals projected for a team, highest chance of a goal scored, most predicted points on the Fantasy Football Scout members area. If you want to check this week and compare it to other players, if you want to look at the highest projected midfielders, defenders to buy, you can do so with the link in the description. And he's the most captained. It is a bold person with the performance we saw midweek, with them starting to gel, with Isak coming in to go against Mo Salah. If you are not captaining Mo Salah this week, I'd be really interested to know if you're going for one of the other options we've got here or who else it is you are deciding to go with. Of course, Mo Salah and Liverpool are the early kickoff, and some people don't like to captain that. To be honest, I don't love it. I'd rather him be at 2 o'clock on a Sunday, for example, but it's not enough to put me off when I don't think there's that many other standout options. Now, moving on and talking about the fixtures this week and having a look at the press conference update. So, starting off at Arsenal, Saka, Ben White, and Odegaard have a late fitness test before such a big game. I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly at least two of these three are available. However, Arteta did say that they haven't trained yet, so it would feel like a bit of a surprise. But given what we know Arteta has said in the past, and then the likes of Saka has turned up, and how big this game is, I wouldn't be massively surprised if some of these did play, but you're not looking to buy them this week. At Crystal Palace, Adam Wharton is back. Eddie Nketiah is also back available. Now, I don't think he will start in place of Mateta, but we did have quotes this week that Mateta does need a rest. I do expect that to happen next midweek. They do have a European fixture, so maybe Mateta is needed there, but we are going to see a rest for Mateta at some point, but I don't expect it to be this week away at West Ham with Nketiah just returning, and of course, Ismail Assar not being available. That's the other takeaway. Ismail Assar is expected to return to training early next week, so he should be back next week for game week 6 for Liverpool and game week 7 onwards, most likely. Sarr is soon. Wharton is back. It's just a big boost for them. At Liverpool, they have a fully fit and available squad, so try predicting who it is going to be that starts. Frimpong or Bradley probably play at right back, which means Dominic Szoboszlai probably moves into midfield, which means, is it going to be McAllister that drops out? Isak, Ekitike. I probably expect Ekitike to start alongside Gakpo in this one because Isak played his first minutes midweek, but it is going to become very difficult to start to predict that Liverpool lineup. At Manchester United, they do have a boost that Matheus Cunha and Mason Mount are both available. Whether you think they've been great or not this season, this is a definite boost because they were better when these two were in the team. At Wolves, Strand Larsen is back and he is available. The manager did say he's unlikely to play 90 minutes, but if you've got him now, you probably look to start him. And finally, at Nottingham Forest, Murillo remains a doubt for the fixture. If you've got him as part of bench boot, it's probably enough to put me off. Just to rattle through some of these, like when you look at the projections on the left-hand side now, Liverpool, the only team projected to score anywhere close to 2 goals, 2.11. Outside of that, Arsenal get 1.6, Brighton get 1.6, Chelsea get the same, Man United 1.5. It is incredibly low for the amount of goals that are being predicted in game week 5. Then when you have a look at the actual fixtures that the clean sheet odds that you've got on the other side, they are much higher, right? It is a much better week for clean sheets than it is for goals scored. Liverpool at the top, Villa second. After what we've seen so far this season, for Villa to be the second highest predicted clean sheets, I have to say is a bit of a surprise. Fulham, Wolves, Leeds, Arsenal, it's just a really low scoring week, but actually not that many clean sheets are being predicted. So it feels like there's going to be a lot of 1-1 draws this week. When I'm doing my predictions for this week, I'm going to put a lot of 1-1s and 1-0s and 2-1s because not many teams are actually predicted to keep a clean sheet, but there's also not many teams predicted to score an awful lot of goals. So don't be surprised if at the end of the week you don't have as many returns as you'd wanted to, because at the moment it's not predicted to be that good. Then having a look at some players to buy. So starting off in goal, the Arsenal fixture run coming up looks great. So David Raya is in number 1. I've gone with Donnarumma number 2. Looks like he's going to be first choice, playing every game for Manchester City. And from next week, the fixtures look good. And we saw in the most recent game how much better they could look defensively with him in the side. And then we've gone with Sanchez. Now, there was quotes midweek that basically said Sanchez can't play every game, which I'm a little bit surprised at, because why does every other goalkeeper play every game? Like, Raya plays every game when he's available. Alisson does, apart from the cup game. So why can't Sanchez? But when we have a 4 million goalkeeper in Dubravka, Sanchez missing the odd game is not the end of the world. However, if he was your only goalkeeper, I wouldn't be advising going with him. So I still don't mind him, because the Chelsea fixtures between now and about Christmas time do look really good. But only do it, of course, if you can have Dubravka as your backup. If you need a 4.5, I don't mind Kelleher, but their fixture's not great. Petrovic of Bournemouth is definitely the standout for me. And of course, then we've got Dubravka as the option, cheap option, backup goalkeeper. It should be in everyone's teams. Then into defence. So similarly to Bournemouth, I love Senesi. One of the two defenders along with Tarkowski to hit DEFCON in every single game. I feel like I've wound that out every video I've done this week, but he does look good, and he plays a Newcastle team that have just played against Barcelona in the Champions League on Thursday evening. So they will probably be a little bit fatigued, although Walter Marden didn't actually start that game. So that might give a bit more to the Newcastle attack than maybe we're expecting. I then got Lacroix of Crystal Palace, just because West Ham have been awful from defending set pieces. So him, Richards and Mark Gay are actually all probably better than Munoz for this week alone. Going in on Gabriel, now it is City this week, so you probably don't want to buy, but the long-term fixtures mean he's still good. Then we've got Anderson of Fulham. I quite like him. His DEFCON's not quite as good as Senesi's. Munoz is just a nice long-term pick. His attacking threat is great, but he loses a little bit to Lacroix because of the DEFCON, and then Van Dijk. Short-term, the fixtures are not as good, but long-term, with the clean sheet potential, with him being the only nailed way into the Liverpool defence, and him being all right for DEFCON, I do still like him as a sort of mainstay. I think I would probably consider going with, Gabriel and Van Dijk, or at least one of them on wildcard. Into midfield, Semenyo, the standout one, at a nice price. I'm almost certain I will own him going into game week 6. Buying him against Newcastle have been great defensively is, you can write your narrative, right? Have they been great defensively, or have they just played, Barcelona in the Champions League? Both of these things are true. I think it is still a good week. If you needed to buy a midfielder, he would be top. Palmer back. I do like him, and the long-term fixtures for Chelsea do look really good, including Brighton at home. And we know what happened. Game week 6 last year, Chelsea also had Brighton at home, and Palmer put up a monster haul. I like Xavi Simons. The short to medium-term fixtures for Spurs remain really good. Also, Enzo Fernandez of Chelsea, Illiman and Ndiaye. I actually prefer him over Grealish, and Ndiaye's predicted to drop in price tonight. So if you're going to buy him, wait until tomorrow, because he might drop, in which case there'd be a 0.4 million gap between Ndiaye and Grealish, and I don't think that's really worth it. And if you need a cheaper one, Reinders will look good from next week. I like Caicedo. I don't mind Anderson. I don't mind Dewsbury Hall. Caicedo just feels like a nice long-term pick, and you're probably not buying Reinders this week, given he goes away to Arsenal. But as I say, particularly in midfield, there's a lot of midfielders I like long-term that don't have great fixtures this week, so I don't imagine many of you will be wanting to make a midfield transfer. And then we're moving up front. João Pedro is in number 1, just because Haaland and Gyökeres play against each other this week. Gyökeres, I'm a little bit uncertain of. Kai Havertz isn't expected back until maybe game week 8, maybe game week 9 or later. But his early subs are a little bit worrying. He feels like a player, if he played 90 every week, he'd be the best player in the entire game. But if he's only playing 60, 70 every week, it is a bit of a concern. I still think João Pedro, Haaland, Gyökeres will be in most wildcards next week. But if I was going to drop one of them, Gyökeres would probably be the one I take out. Now, Arsenal fans, if you're watching and you disagree in his minutes and you think they're just going to get better and better, then please let me know. Evan Nilsson I like. Again, it's part of me wants to start buying a few players without Europe, which is nice for Evan Nilsson. Of course, not as good as Semenyo, but takes up a forward spot. Mateta I still like. The slight risk that he needs reduced minutes, a bit of rotation. is enough to drop him down the list. And then Strand Larsen, it sounds like he's back. The long-term fixtures for Wolves look good. He's probably my favourite cheaper forward, and he's dropped in price a couple of times. I'm not certain he's definitely going to start this fixture, but he's better long-term than anyone else at his price. Looking at the benching ranking for this week. So we've basically got every goalkeeper this week, apart from a couple, which is Man United, where we don't really know who's going to start and no one owns them. And West Ham, no one really owns their goalkeeper. Alisson, number one. Saar, if you've got them, of Wolves at home to Leeds. Leno, Martinez, Sells. Henderson, Vicario, Darlow, Petrovic, Sanchez, David Raya, Dubravka, Kelleher, Rolfs, Verbruggen, Donnarumma, Pope, and Pickford. As good as the City and Arsenal defences have been, if you don't have to play them this week, I probably wouldn't. Into the attack, if you've got Watkins, Wood, Ekitike, Mateta, Rogers, some people have asked me, along with Wirtz, to include them. I would still definitely start them with the fixtures they've got. Kudus, then Anderson of Nottingham Forest, Paqueta, Strand Larsen, Anderson of Fulham. Senesi, I also really like this week. I just think Fulham's chance of a clean sheet is maybe slightly higher. Senesi, Cunha, who is back in training for Man United. Illiman and Dye over Grealish. Then it is Rutter. I would probably go with Josh King over some of the defenders. Then I've got the Forest defence. Kukurea, Agbadu, then the Spurs defence. I just think Brighton might score in this game. Gabriel, Calafiori. Probably prefer them over going with Reinders. I wouldn't be surprised if this game finished 0-0. Diouf, Esteve. Then it is the Leeds defence, especially with Strand Larsen. I think that boosts Wolves and knocks Leeds down a little bit. Konza, Tarkowski, and Dewsbury Hall. So then quickly having a look at a free hit draft, I'm going to tell you straight away before you even look at it that I don't like it very much. I think this is because the predictions for this week are really low. It's very hard to pick a great free hit draft. I really would put you off playing it and just accepting it and saving the free hit for a later week. But if you are set on it, I've gone with Saar in goal as a cheap option at home to Leeds with Dubravka on the bench, Anderson of Fulham, Virgil van Dijk and Lacroix, Salah, Gakpo, Cole Palmer and Semenyo, João Pedro, Chris Wood and Mateta. If I knew Strand Larsen was definitely going to play, I'd include him. I've gone with no Arsenal, gone with no Manchester City, just because I think that game, as I've said, is so difficult to call that I wouldn't be buying them on a free hit and I'd just be waiting to get them in game week 6. It doesn't actually look that good. I think a free hit this week is really difficult to build, so I would put you off playing the chip if you are considering it. And talking of chips that you could play that actually don't look great this week, the other one is the wildcard. Very briefly, just to talk about which premiums I would look to own if I was playing a wildcard this week. There are a few combinations, and we spoke about this at the beginning of the video. You could go Haaland Salah, you could go Haaland Palmer Gyökeres, or you could go Salah Palmer Gyökeres. I've tried building a Haaland Salah Palmer draft or a Haaland Salah Gyökeres draft. The Haaland Salah Gyökeres you can just about do, but I think both of them with Haaland Salah and another 9 million plus player isn't worth it. So those are probably the three combinations. And the most popular one at the moment is dropping Mo Salah. So that is the draft that I've built. But you will notice looking at it, it doesn't look great for this week. And particularly captaincy because you're taking out Mo Salah. I actually wonder if you were going to wildcard this week, if you'd be better off going Haaland and Salah just because of the captaincy in game week 5 alone. I actually play a back four. So Raya or Dubravka could start in goal. And maybe you'd go Dubravka because you've also got Gabriel in defence. Senesi, Gabriel, Lacroix and Anderson in defence. Palmer, Semenyo. And then I've gone Caicedo. We've also got Reinders and Dewsbury Hall on the bench. If you wanted to start one of those over Caicedo, that's fine. We've got João Pedro, Haaland, Gyökeres, Reinders, Dewsbury Hall and Tarkowski. You would have to accept with this draft that you might play a back four sometimes. And that is absolutely fine. João Pedro, Haaland, Gyökeres play every week. Palmer, Semenyo plays every week. And probably Gabriel and maybe one of the other defenders. But outside of that, you've got Caicedo, Reinders, Dewsbury Hall, and all of the defenders. So don't be thinking you've just got 3 cheap midfielders that it doesn't look strong enough, because what you might do is actually only play 1 or 2. You could play 2 of them every week. That's fine. They do have good fixtures, but you could also play 1 of them and play a back 4. And with the 4 defenders that you've got here, that really wouldn't be a problem. But the issue with this is built with what a game week 6 wildcard would look like. And it's very similar to that because a lot of the game week 6 wildcard teams don't have the best fixture this week. And I've spoken all video about how the fixtures don't look great this week, but it is true because this is what the wildcard draft would sort of look like if you wanted to go Haaland and Palmer, who's got the captaincy armband. So again, a bit like the free hit, as much as you might not like your team this week, If you're wanting to get price changes, like that's fine. You can activate it this week, but I probably would save it until game week 6. And then we're going to my team, and I want to discuss a few things. The first thing is at the beginning of the week, I started my transfer plans video by saying in the intro, enough is enough, and we need to do something to turn this around. And now we're at the end of the week, and in my team selection video, I said, I'm going to roll my transfer, and I might not wildcard until game week 8, and I will keep double Aston Villa for that. Now, maybe at the beginning of the week, how often at the beginning of or the end of a game week do we all have worse thoughts about our team? We want to make rash transfers, and actually as we get closer to the next deadline, we calm down a little bit. I definitely have that feeling, and I think that has played a big part in maybe the way that my thought process has transitioned throughout the week, because I do look at my team and think it isn't good, and I don't think the players are performing well enough. And if I had 2 wildcards, I would play it this week in order to have the second one in a few more weeks. But I do only have 1 wildcard before Christmas, so I need to be picking the best possible time in order for me to go and play it. I am not going to save the wildcard beyond game week 8, I don't think. But I do wonder, once we get to game week 6 and I buy Haaland in place of Salah and probably Chris Wood, and I look at my team and suddenly I've still got quite a strong lineup, I'm not sure it's particularly worth the wild card in game week 6. I am absolutely not ruling it out, and it is still probably 30 to 40% likely that I still wildcard in game week 6. And if we get to the end of the week and Villa have failed to score again, no matter how good their fixtures are, I might just be inclined to say, you know what, enough is enough. Let's get rid of them. So the plan this week, just to talk about this week, is to roll my transfer. The only thing I considered was Rodgers to Semenyo, which is still a transfer I like, but I'm going to buy Semenyo in game week 6 regardless. I think if I wildcard 8, it'll be Salah to Semenyo and probably Wood to Haaland, so I will buy Semenyo regardless. So don't think I'm going to go and do it this week, because if I use a transfer this week and then want to buy Haaland in game week 6, it will then be a -4 to do it. So I think I'm going to roll. I'm almost certain I'm going to roll. I feel like I could basically say I'm definitely going to roll, but never say never in case something was to happen. But I don't see a transfer I'm going to make. And I do think I'm going to play the bench boost. I don't think it's amazing. I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 players on my bench blanked, but I think there was enough there to get it out of the way. And particularly with me looking to wildcard in either 6 or 8, I then won't have to worry about, is there a week where all my defenders have a good fixture? Is there a week where Dubravka has a good fixture? And I can think more about rotations rather than trying to fill one specific week. And the other thing is, because I might wildcard in game week 8, that is a really good week to bench boost. And if you're wildcarding 6, you might look to bench boost in 8, because Dubravka's leads at home that week, which looks good for them. But because there's a chance I wildcard in 8, I don't really have an obvious other option in order to play my bench boost. It doesn't look good in game week 6 because Agbadu goes away to Spurs and Dubravka goes away to Manchester City. Game week 7, it also doesn't look particularly good either. So I think I'm going to bench boost this week. I would say I'm about 80% now that I'm going to bench boost, going to roll my transfer, and then it's just based on a few performances, right? Because if Paqueta suddenly looked all right and Aston Villa looked all right, as did Forest, then maybe I save the wild card a couple of weeks until game week 8 and just buy Haaland and maybe triple captain him. Or if things go horribly wrong again, I might just play it in game week 6 and buy Cole Palmer for Brighton at home. That is the other thing in game week 6. I don't want to talk about it too much because we'll discuss it on the stream and over the weekend. But if I don't wildcard, the triple captaincy on Haaland will be very, very convincing for me. Probably about 70% that I would play the triple captain at home to Burnley. It feels a little bit early to suddenly bench boost, triple captain, and wildcard in just a few weeks, but I do think it's a great fixture. Burnley don't look great defensively, although they kept Liverpool out, and Haaland looks like an absolute machine. But this week, bench boost, roll the transfer, captain Salah, and we'll see where we are at the end of the weekend. And that is all for the complete guide video. Enough is enough with this video. Of course, there'll be a 2-hour deadline stream on Saturday morning where we'll be answering your questions. Liverpool at the early kickoff as well, making sure Mo Salah is going to be our captains. We'll be answering everything you've got. And also after the end of that deadline stream, we will be looking at a first plan of a game week 6 wildcard. For those of you wanting to activate it on Saturday, we'll be discussing that during the end of the deadline stream tomorrow as well. Thank you all very much for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Drop any questions you have. that haven't been answered in this complete guide video in the comments. I will answer some and we'll also discuss the rest of them during the deadline stream. Thank you for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll be back again very soon.